Hey everybody! We're going to learn about the ear in this video, which is one of the most amazing organs because it's basically a miniature machine, and it's a living machine that's allowed us, humans and other animals, to actually hear sounds and figure out what's around us just by absorbing the sound waves in the air. So what you'll need to do in this video is you should be able to list the parts of the ear, and then you should be able to list some common causes that cause hearing loss in people. Alright, so here's a whole lot of different ears. We've got humans, we've got a bat with its humongous ears, and then we've got some kind of big cat here. I think it's a panther. And you can see, particularly in mammals, we've got a really big external ear. So the part that's outside of the head. But other animals like reptiles and birds, they've still got ears, but they're inside their head and they don't have that big external ear. But they've all evolved to work for that animal. Okay, so let's learn all the different parts of the ear and a really brief summary of what they do. So a really good place to start is to divide the ear up into three separate sections. And this is the part that doctors and scientists divide the ear up into. Firstly, we've got the outer ear. And this is the part that's exposed to the air and the environment outside. Because air can go in through the canal here, but it gets blocked off by the eardrum. And so the eardrum, that's the boundary between the middle ear, which is this middle section in here. And then this part here, the purple and the yellow part, that's the inner ear. So this part. Okay. So then we'll talk about each section and how they actually help us to hear. So as a sound wave comes through the environment, so remember it's a longitudinal wave, we've got compressions and rarefactions moving towards us. The first thing they do is they hit this part of the ear here. And this is called the auricle. Or just the ear flap is the common name for it. And the auricle's got a special shape so that it funnels the sound wave into the tube here. And it funnels all the sounds and collects as much as it can. So it collects and focuses the sound into the ear. Into the ear. Alright, and then once the sound's reached the inside part of the ear here, it goes through this tube, which is called the ear canal. So the auricle's this part. The ear canal is the inner tube there. And the ear canal, well, that just carries the sound wave until it hits the eardrum. So you can imagine that the longitudinal wave goes through the tube here, and when it hits the eardrum starts to vibrate, and it vibrates at the same frequency, the same speed as the sound wave is. So this little white part here that's shaped like a dinner plate, that's called the eardrum. And that's the third step. So it vibrates at the same speed as the actual sound wave. And we call that at the same frequency. Okay, and once the eardrum starts vibrating, then it gets to these little bones in here, these three little bones. And this is the most amazing part of the ear, I find, And it really shows how the ear is like a miniature machine, because these 3 bones here are all attached to the eardrum, and they carry the vibration from the eardrum through the middle ear and then onto the next part of the ear. And so each part vibrates and it passes the vibration onto the next part. And these 3 little bones here are called the ossicles. Ossicle just means baby bone or little bone. And the ossicles, like I said, they carry the vibrations from the eardrum onto the next part. Okay. And they are these 3 little bones just here. And then the next part is this bluey purple section, and this is called the cochlea. You might have heard of it before because this is part of the ear that we can actually implant a medical device into to help people hear. And we'll learn more about that later. But the cochlea, it is filled with a whole lot of liquid. So you can see it's got a spiral shape like a snail shell. It's filled with liquid. And if we zoom in on that, so if we zoom into part of that spiral shape here, on that lining inside the cochlea, there are these tiny little cells, and each cell has a couple of hairs coming out into the liquid inside the cochlea. So this is the inner part here. And as the vibrations get carried from the ossicles into the cochlea, well then waves of vibrations pass through the liquid inside the cochlea, and then those waves cause the hairs to bend. And the bending of the hairs is detected by these special cells that are called receptors, these little ones here. And then they detect the message, and then they send that on to the nerve, and the nerve carries the message to the brain to actually let us hear. So this is where the real detection of the sound happens. So in the cochlea, it detects the vibrations using the hair cells. And then, like I said, those hair cells, they tell the message to the nerves, and you can see the nerves here. And in particular, they're called the auditory nerves, because auditory means to do with sound. Then the auditory nerves, they carry the message to the brain. And then it's the brain that actually does the processing, and it goes, oh, okay, well, I know what that sound is. And it's how we actually hear. So there's 6 steps in hearing, and you can see it's like a miniature machine with all the parts working together. And I think it's fascinating how this structure has managed to evolve in different animals so that they can hear. All right. So the next thing to talk about is to really quickly look at different ways that the ear can be damaged and that can cause hearing loss. So there are 4 main causes of actual people losing their hearing. Firstly, if you just get too much build-up of earwax in the ear canal. That's one really common way. Although also people sometimes have tumours that grow and cause the ear canal to be blocked, or maybe they have inflammation as well. So the first kind we just call a blockage overall, which means sound can't get to the eardrum, so then we can't actually hear any sounds. The other type of cause is simply old age. And that causes the hair cells in the cochlea to die off, and then we actually can't process the hearing as well. So that affects the cochlea. We can also have trauma. And trauma can include things like getting a head injury. So knocking your head, maybe getting a concussion, or getting your ear knocked by something. That can cause damage to lots of different parts of the ear. So maybe the eardrum can be damaged, the ossicles, or even the cochlea. So lots of possible regions there, particularly in the middle ear. And the final thing that can cause you to lose your hearing or to reduce it is if the nerves themselves get damaged, the auditory nerves. So we can just call it nerve damage overall. There are lots of different ways the nerves can be damaged, particularly things like, old age can affect the nerves too. Certain diseases can, and certain conditions, genetic conditions as well. And they'll affect how the message goes from the ear to the brain. So sometimes they can be fixed and sometimes they can't. So just like every complicated machine, things can go wrong, and these are the main ways that it can go wrong. And doctors and scientists have to figure out ways to try and fix these people's hearing if it happens. Okay, lots of information in this video, but you should be able to list all these parts of the ear and know some of the main causes of hearing loss.